Pursuant to Rule 4.30, Bakeberg moves that House Bill number 1434 be recalled from the Committee on Commerce, Finance, and Policy, be given its second reading, and be placed on the General Register.
I recognize a member from Scott, Representative Bakeberg, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House File 1334 is a common sense bill that actually I dropped last year. And we were waiting for resolution from the Supreme Court to rule about the constitutionality of it, and that was upheld. So 1334 requires that digital pornography websites use age verification to make sure that kids are protected and they do not access pornography online. So this is a bill to protect kids. So all it is doing is taking what happens in the physical world and bringing it into the digital world so kids cannot get on pornography sites online. Porn is not, and I want to be clear, porn is not an educational tool. Porn is not an educational tool. Common Sense Media recently released a survey that found that 84% of adults believe that adult or pornography websites should have age verification to protect kids from adult content or pornography. Members, this is an easy green vote to protect our kids, and I would request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Bakeberg. Further discussion to the motion. I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we had a really great conversation about this bill in committee. And everybody in committee talked about how it was the right idea, wrong approach. Not wrong approach, I guess there was just some concerns in this bill, especially when it was talking about the fact that...
Members, please take your conversations to alcoves or the retiring room. Representative Cagle.
I love when men up here start, you know, harassing women speakers. And I also, little jeers and stuff are not appreciated. Let's be respectful, people. So what I wanted to point out was that there is a section in this bill that basically dubs that there will be somebody that determines what appropriate information is. We had asked the author, we had directly asked the author to work with us to address our concerns. The author then emailed me and asked, you know, how we felt about this bill, and I asked him, has the work been done? Has the work been done? I didn't get a response from that email. Or I did get a response, I'm sorry, but it was, well, yeah, kinda, not really. We like what we have. We're not really, you know, we don't really wanna work with you on this because we want to find a way to limit what folks can see and what they, you know, kind of control what folks say. And there was, I'm trying to find the section in the bill that had this really questionable language on it. The fact of the matter is, we could have done some real good work on this bill. We could have gotten it to a place where people agreed that the concerns of our side were addressed, like we do with a lot of bills. In Commerce, we've passed a lot of bills out of that committee on single subject because we've been working great together. And we've been doing some really respectful and good work. But when there is no good faith effort to actually come to the table and address concerns of certain members, then you're totally disregarding them. And I also want to point out that when we had that very great discussion in Commerce, that some of the words that my colleagues had said were completely misconstrued, put up online on social media to make a target out of her. And I'm really, really sick of people using this kind of stuff as a way to target people. So when we have an informed conversation in committee, and then seconds later that video is taken, that puts my members in jeopardy, that makes it dangerous for one of my colleagues to go outside their home. What are we doing? What is the point? Why can't we just treat each other nicely? And this is one of those bills that if anybody else but me gets up and speaks on, I'm sure one of our members will go put it on social media and try and get somebody killed. I'm not joking, you guys. You think this is funny, but this is real. You're not laughing?
Madam Speaker, what point of business are we on?
We're talking about a bill.
Excuse me. We are, I'm going to remind the body of Mason's 124, paragraph 3. Please refrain from using personalities in debate and questioning members' motives. I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Folks, if we're serious about protecting kids, we got to be serious about protecting them from one of the biggest dangers that every single one of our kids deals with, and that is obscenity on the internet. Kids are drowning in this stuff, and we have the ability to solve that problem. The Supreme Court had heard a similar law from Texas. They said this does not violate the First Amendment if we set it up the way this bill is written. This is common sense. We can do this. And all we've heard from the other side are excuses. Two excuses in particular that should not hold water. One is, oh, there's language in here that was taken from a Supreme Court decision about obscenity. Yes, that's the way to write this bill. And frankly, I know that Chair Kegel, you've had that conversation with Chair Bakeberg, or with Representative Bakeberg. But just go talk to your researchers, and you'll understand why the language in this bill is written the way it is. It is from U.S. Supreme Court precedent about what is legal to be regulated. What is legal to be regulated is obscene material, and this language in this bill tracks that Supreme Court decision. The other excuse we heard is that something somebody said on video was boosted to the world. Well, frankly, folks, that is our job. Our job is to debate issues, and if someone says something about an issue that we disagree with, to say, here's something someone said that we disagree with. Now, every single one of us in here has heard people criticize us. And I absolutely agree that there are times where that crosses the line. There are times where that crosses the line to, I'm sure 134 of us have had things that cross the line. And Representative Finke, I've seen things that cross the line that are directed to you. Representative Kegel, I've seen things that have crossed the line that have been directed to you. I've seen things that have crossed the line directed at Speaker Damath. We saw something just this last week directed at the late Speaker Emerita Hortman that crossed the line. I think we could get 134 votes on some of these things that crossed the line. But our job here is to make policy, to debate those policies, regardless of whether someone's feelings got hurt. Folks, voting green on this to move it to the general register is us doing our jobs to protect kids. Members, vote green.
I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today in Judiciary, we voted unanimously for a bill that Rep. Hansen had on notification. And we heard from 2 victims of that terrible crime. And I want us to all think about the victims of pornography, the objectified women and children that are in this smutty, dark online world and how that victimizes them. And I wanted to just capture, and I also want to say that it victimizes the viewer of the pornography because it gives the viewer an unrealistic picture of reality. 93% of boys and 62% of girls are exposed to internet pornography before the age of 18. 70% of boys have spent at least 30 consecutive minutes looking at online porn on at least one occasion. 35% of boys have done this on at least 10 occasions. 83% of boys have seen group sex on the internet. 67% of children admit to clearing their internet history to hide their online activity. 79% of accidental exposure to internet porn among kids takes place in the home. And by the way, I've seen some stats that can occur pretty regularly by the age of 8. 56% of divorce cases involve one party having an obsessive interest in online porn, 56%. 12% of websites on the internet are pornographic, approximately 25 million websites. Two of the top 100 websites on the internet are porn sites. 40 million Americans regularly visit pornographic websites. 2.5 billion emails per day are pornographic. 25% of search engine requests each day are pornography related, approximately 70 million per day. Only 3% of pornographic websites require age verification. Only 3%. 10% of pornography users report being addicted. I think the number's much higher. That's the only ones that reported. The average age a child first sees internet pornography on this site, at least, it says 11. And 70% of young men ages 18 to 24 visit pornographic websites on at least a monthly basis. And we haven't got into the brain science of what it does to teenage brains. Members, this should be an easy vote for all of us. Online pornography is too easily accessible to our kids. We need this bill to verify age. You know what's happened in places, other states that have passed this law? The online porn websites get up and leave. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that many of you have been affected by pornography addiction by someone that you know in your life. And that should not be our kids. We should be protecting them from a young age. Again, pornography objectifies women and children. Some of these sites are very violent. Not a good thing for anyone to be watching, let alone a child. Please vote yes on this bill. Please, I'm begging you to vote yes to protect the kids of the state of Minnesota from this easily accessible online harm.
I recognize the member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Thank you, members. Well, I'm not terribly familiar with this bill. The difference in the Judiciary Committee, we have heard a number of bills on this same kind of thing. As Chair Scott just mentioned, we heard the nudification bill. That's Representative Jess Hansen's bill. We just heard that today, passed it unanimously. Heard the testimony, looked at it for the data issues in it. And the problem that I see here is I don't think this bill has gone to Judiciary. Could the author yield? I've forgotten who the author is, actually. Oh.
Are you asking for Representative Bakeberg to yield to a question?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Representative Bakeberg will yield. Representative Liebling.
Thank you. Representative Bakeberg, did this bill go to Judiciary? And are you, well, let me just ask you, has it gone to Judiciary?
Representative Bakeberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you. The bill currently is sitting in Commerce. That's why we have an urgency to bring this to the floor now. And frankly, it's stuck in Commerce because we heard it earlier in session, and then on March 11th, I emailed all of the members of the Commerce Committee and all of my DFL colleagues that had expressed interest. Just as a reminder, this bill is bipartisan in the House, House File 1434, and it's bipartisan in the Senate as well. So I emailed all of the DFL colleagues that spoke during the Commerce hearing, and I also emailed those members that had expressed interest over the interim and then during session, and I heard back from Chair Cagle, and she said that she wasn't comfortable moving the bill out. So she had some concerns, and that's why I reached out to all of my DFL colleagues to try to have a conversation to get this important bill moving. Because I think we can all agree that having access to pornography for kids is not okay. There are about 26 states that have already passed some form of age verification. And as I talked about in the beginning, we intentionally waited until hearing the Supreme Court ruling. That came out in June, and this was one of the first bills that we heard from the GOP side in Commerce because this is an important issue. I see it all the time in my principal role where kids are struggling, and oftentimes it leads back to pornography that they're struggling with. So this is an important bill to keep kids safe.
Representative Liebling.
Well, thank you for kind of not answering the question, but your answer is no, it didn't go to Judiciary. And no one here is saying it isn't an important issue. In fact, as Chair Scott just said, we heard about this today in Judiciary. We were, frankly, all of us kind of felt like probably throwing up when we heard some of the stuff that's happening to people because of this nudification technology that Representative Hansen's been working on. So we all have a lot of interest in this topic, but we also have rules. And quite frankly, Representative Bakeberg, I'm not asking you to yield, so you can sit down. I'm not going to ask you to yield again, especially since you didn't answer my question. But so in this body, we actually are here for a reason. Every Democrat is not the same as every other Democrat. The fact that some people were for something doesn't mean all of us are. Especially, I would dare say, in this current environment where we have this tie, it's kind of having people think a little bit independently sometimes, which I'm kind of enjoying. And we still have a committee process, and the committee process is there for a reason. And in fact, under the rules of this body, there are some mandatory referrals to Judiciary. So notwithstanding that this is an important bill, as you say, and I, of course, am not really familiar with it, not having heard it in committee, you could be making a motion to move it to Judiciary. Now, you might say, oh, but we have the deadline. The deadline, you know, the deadline only stops a bill if people don't agree with it. If people want it to happen, it can come back through the Rules Committee after having had the proper vetting in the committees where it needs to go. So I can only think that this is more of a stunt and not a serious effort when I see you trying to move it to the floor, skipping the mandatory referral to Judiciary. And we've been hearing a lot of bills like this, but there are serious issues that I see just in the language. You know, we've talked about, you know, how do you age verify, what happens, who has to What information do you have to submit to be age verified? How does all this work? What do they do with your data? Even location data is an issue. A lot of folks don't like to let everybody in the world know where they are every minute. I know I don't. So I think there are issues here. Not saying it isn't a serious underlying concern. Of course, we all share that concern. But I think the effort here today, if you were moving it to judiciary, I might vote with you. But you're not. You're trying to move it to the floor, skipping the jurisdiction of judiciary. And so I have to vote no on the bill. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you so much, Representative Bakeberg, for bringing this forward. House File 1434, again, simply is bringing age verification. It's another way that we can say that we love Minnesota kids. We want to help them, protect them, and ensure that they are going to have a safety net. I'm going to tell you a story about a good friend of mine. And it actually, it's quite emotional. She was 5 years old. Her and her sister were in a new situation, found themselves in a new situation with a divorced parents. So they had a new babysitter that was a family friend that they trusted. He exposed that little 5-year-old and 3.5-year-old to pornography. Images that those little girls had never seen in their lives. And the fear and shame that came with that, she still has brought up here she's in her 50s now, but she can still see those images in her brain. And what that did for her is allowed an open door, a way that somebody was able to manipulate and use her. We know this happening, all around the nation, around the globe, is that kids are being exploited online. And we are hearing many bills about exploitation. We have grave concerns around cameras being in certain places that are watching our children in daycare because we're concerned about their images of their faces being used in other areas of pornography. These bills we're hearing in committees. Why would we not have a sense of urgency to find an upstream measure, a simple measure to put in place to protect minors, to protect those most vulnerable, to talk to my friend and her little sister and know what's gone on in their lives based on what they saw as little kids has had unintended consequences. So again, I just would ask that the body would be using common sense here today and we would vote green on this. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hanson J.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. I don't need to be convinced about the issue. I think we are all on the same page on that, and I just want to be clear about that piece to start with. But what I do want to talk about right now is that what the work that we do here matters a lot, and how we do it matters a whole lot too. And so I will keep my comments short here, but I just over and over and over this session, I've run into situations where people will make these really meaningful propositions about why we should do something, and I don't hear a lot of people disagreeing with doing something. What I do see people disagreeing with is how we go about it. And I know that's the boring part of the legislature, and we don't really always like to talk about process and all of that, but process matters, especially when we're talking about things like this and many other things. And so I just really want to make sure that as we talk about this, we look at what's being said. I think we've heard that we want folks to do the work. That's what we were sent here to do. What we pass in bills matters a whole lot, and the way we say it matters a whole lot too. And so I just really want to help us avoid, my bill's been mentioned here today, for example, but I've done the work extensively to make sure that any kinds of inadvertent or things I didn't expect or think about were addressed. And I think that's really important here. I know that folks have reached out and talked to about this issue and were expressing interest in finding language. I talked to the advocates after that hearing, and again, you have to like work through the things that are being said. Nobody, I don't think in that committee said they have disagreed with the premise of what was said. It is about how we do it though. We cannot cut corners on public policy. We are here, we were sent here to do good work for the people of Minnesota, and that's what's being asked, that we do quality public policy. We put these things through the process that this institution protects, and we honor that process. I think that's important. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, maybe that's what it is, but I do want to just say that we need to do the work to find the language that works, that's going to achieve the mission that we're looking to do. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
So, I think the thing that frustrates me the most in this fourth year, second term, under a historical tie, is the absurdity of the political theater. You guys bring up an urgency, we argue against it. We bring up an urgency, you argue against it, and we just kind of like interchange the arguments. Well, it hasn't been heard here, it hasn't been heard there. But what's fascinating, what seems to go unacknowledged, is the fact that maybe the reason a bill hasn't gone from one committee to another is because you're actually just against it, right? Like maybe that's the reason it didn't go out of commerce. And the reason why I suspect that and why I feel as though I can speak to it without coming close to violating our rules against speaking to motive is because the motive was very clearly explained by Chair Cagle. She went on a rant about how offended she was that we noticed something. We noticed what you said and the context in which you said it. This is a bill that it says in order to access pornographic material online, your age has to be verified. That's all it does. That's all it does. And the comment that was raised in committee by one of your members was that we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, or we should hold our horses because LGBT kids might somehow not get access to necessary sex education. Now, you could say that that comment was misconstrued, but in order to make that claim, you're going to have to explain why the context in which that comment was made was a bill that requires age verification for pornography. If you want to make the argument that there's a lack of LGBT sex education, then make that argument. Bring that bill, that we need to have that as part of what we have in our school instruction. But in the context of a bill that says we're simply going to ensure that you're an adult before you access pornographic material, to bring that up, that's going to raise some eyebrows. Now, Chair Cagle, and again, this isn't me impugning motive, this is me repeating her words. Chair Cagle says that because we noticed that and we put it online, and so did a bunch of other national outlets because it raises some eyebrows, that was intended to get one of your members killed. What is this rule, this unwritten rule that we're abiding by? If the thing you say objectively offends people, it's somehow wrong to notice it and point at it and say, wow, that was weird. I don't know how you articulate that rule and put it into our legislative rules, but that's what's going to need to happen before we just ignore the things you say and the context in which you say them. Chair Liebling wants to see this in judiciary. Well, there's a real easy way to do that. Chair Cagle's right over there. Have her send it to you. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard Chair Liebling in committee say that just because we move this bill forward from one committee to another is not saying that we like the shape of the bill and the way it is right now. It's saying we want to advance it, we want to work on it. Representative Bakeberg, will you yield to a question?
Representative Bakeberg will yield to a question. Representative Hudson.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, Representative Bakeberg, in the aftermath of the Commerce hearing where this bill was heard and concerns were raised about the potential impact on LGBT sex education, were there any conversations between you and the representative who raised those concerns about how to address that in your bill?
Representative Bakeberg.
I did not get a response from that representative in the email that I sent.
Representative Hudson.
Funny that. Funny that. Oh, you need to work on your bill, Representative Hansen says. You haven't put in the work. Really? The curtain's pulled back, my friends. Your actions speak louder than your words, and your words deflect from the substance of the bill to disingenuous questions about process and emotionally deflective concerns about the danger of repeating what you said. That's the reality here. And I don't know, I would have thought that at this point you guys would have learned this. Every time you do this nonsense, it will be called out. And the record reflects the truth of what you're doing. It's 2026, people see. They aren't all reading the Star Tribune anymore. You are behind the curve on how much you're gonna have to adjust in order to deal with the collective intelligence of the people of Minnesota.
Further discussion? I recognize Representative Bakeberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Representative Finke, I wanted to just address what happened online for you is unacceptable. What Representative Niska or Leader Niska talked about, what happens to a number of us online is disgusting. What happens on social media and how people are pitted against each other is unacceptable. So just at a level setting, let's just name that. So I just want to address, this bill was dropped last February 24th of 2025. From that time on, I have been meeting, and Senator Kroon in the Senate has been meeting with multiple stakeholders from both sides of the perspective on this issue. I have been working and meeting with the one simple goal: to make sure that kids can't take their cell phone and look up porn online. That's the goal. All the other debate, discussion, it's secondary. The goal of this bill is to not allow kids to have access to porn. That's the goal. It's that simple. So then, on January 1st of 26, I sent a number of people in this chamber an email and said, hey, I've got a bill, and I'd love to talk to you about it. And some of you have talked to me about it in passing, in conversations. Then we had the bill hearing. I followed up with an email to those of you that asked questions in the bill hearing to say, hey, let's talk. Let's work the process that we do here and find a solution. But I want to be clear. There is no solution that allows kids access to porn. None. I will not allow that. I had a very good meeting with one member of the DFL, and we see some things differently, and that's great. It was a great conversation. The simple fact of this bill is that the goal is to protect kids from porn. It's a simple green vote. Just a reminder, this is bipartisan in the House. There are DFL, there's one DFL author and GOP authors. It's bipartisan in the Senate. This is an easy green vote to protect kids. Vote green, and I request a roll call if not, Madam Speaker.
A roll call has been requested. There will be a roll call. The clerk will take the roll. Members, we are still under call. You must vote. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Go ahead.
Jones, no.
Jones votes no. Rarig.
Rarick votes aye.
Rarig votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail.